it's Emily, the Witch of Pinewoods, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about 7 things that I wish I knew as a beginner witch. This can be helpful for both new witches and people that have been witches for a while. So I hope that you stay tuned and hear what I have to say. Topic number 1 is you don't need to buy anything. When I was a new witch, I was in college and I had basically no money. So I was working with the environment around me. A lot of the herbs that I was using were either from the kitchen or I harvested them myself and did research to see what was in my area. I have a very close bond with pine trees now, hence my YouTube channel name, and I work with them very often in my practice because of that close bond that I have with them. I also use rose a lot because my now husband would bring me roses and I would dry them, and that way I'd be able to use that flower very often in my practice. And roses are great for a lot of things, so is pine. And in the beginning of your practice, you're more likely doing a lot of protection magic, and both rose and pine are great for protection magic. On the same vein, you can do low-cost witchcraft. The dollar store is a great place. The thrift store is a great place. There's nothing wrong with getting dollar store and thrift store supplies. If anything, it's better to thrift stuff, especially. It's better for the environment to thrift. And if you can only afford the dollar store, that's okay too. Our ancestors were folk practitioners. They probably didn't even call themselves witches. And they worked off of the land. And so sometimes the more you connect with the land, the better and more powerful your practice can be. And that is often the lower cost witchcraft. You don't need fancy things. You don't need to buy everything right away. You can work with what you have, because more often than not, people have very simple supplies at home already, or they have what they need in their area. And really, the most important thing is yourself and your intention. The thrift store was a great place when I was in college. I got a lot of candles from there, I got some dishes from there, candle holder, there's bells, if you do have an altar, you can get altar supplies there. You can probably find stuff for a deity. No matter where you are in your practice, the thrift store can be an absolute gold mine. The thrift store is fantastic, and like I said before, it's great for the environment to help things not go into the landfill and instead be used by someone else. A lot of the things that you see in my videos I've either collected over time or I likely already had. A lot of the shells, sticks, antlers, bones that I have, I either collected myself in nature or I collected over a long period of time or were gifted to me. You don't need to have an elaborate altar at all, especially for witches that are in the broom closet. Sometimes you can't have an altar, or if you have one, it has to be hidden and very small, and that is perfectly okay. My practice started with a lot of crystal magic and color magic. So I was buying crystals, which is what I felt comfortable telling my family. I only just told them about me being a witch and a pagan pretty recently. My husband's known all along, but we've been together since high school, so he knows me, and I'm obviously very comfortable with him knowing everything about me. But my family only just recently found out about my practice. They were thankfully understanding, but I know that there's people out there whose family might not be so accepting. So like I said, with the color magic and crystal magic, those are two examples of low profile witchcraft, I guess is how I'll put it. So color magic, I would do that based off of the clothes that I wear. So you can wear green for luck and growth. You can wear black for protection. You can wear blue to calm you, yellow to feel happy and confident, all that kind of stuff. If you have a presentation, you can wear red for confidence. If you have an interview, wear blue. There's a little bit of color association and even color psychology involved in that. With the crystal magic, you can just say, oh, I just like collecting them, or wear it as some jewelry. You can find, maybe a clear quartz necklace somewhere, and then charge that with your intention, because clear quartz can hold just about any intention, and carry that intention every day with you, and that's magic in itself. So we've already kind of transitioned into this topic, but the second thing that I wish I knew was that you don't need an altar. I kind of felt the pressure in the beginning, seeing everybody's altars online, and I probably spent more money than I needed to, especially as a college student. I didn't need to spend the money that I had on that. I could have done just the same amount of magic with just the same amount of power, with a lot less stuff on my altar, or without an altar at all. And like I was saying, if you're a broom closet witch and you can't have an altar, you can still do magic. So just know you don't need to buy anything, and you don't need an altar to be a witch. Next, you don't need a daily practice. This came in further into my witchcraft journey, but I see a lot of people, especially online when I'm watching some of my favorite witchy creators, talking about their daily practice. And as someone who struggles with chronic illness, it felt like a lot of pressure to do something that I couldn't always manage. It's okay to do things when you can and not make yourself do a daily practice. My daily practice, lighting all these candles, happens maybe every couple of days when I have the time and I have the energy to do it. And that makes it so much more enjoyable because I have the energy to do it, and the energy to feel present in the moment and enjoy this time with the spirits, with the deities that I work with and worship. If you do want to have a daily practice, you can do really low effort things. I'll make another video on that, but I'll give you a couple little tips right now. For example, if you drink coffee or tea, you can stir a sigil, for example a pentacle, into your tea or coffee for protection. We were talking about color magic earlier. That's another easy way to have a daily practice. You can wear devotional jewelry if you work with deities, or you can wear magical and charm jewelry if you don't. So those are easy ways to have a daily practice, or if you're like me, or you're too busy, it's okay to not have a daily practice and to just do what you can on the days that you can. Next, you don't need to work with deities at all, or not right away. When I was a new witch, I saw a lot of people working with deities and, again, felt a lot of pressure. Sometimes I wish I wasn't on social media when I was becoming a witch because there was a lot of pressure from it. But now I can be here and help you guys if you're going through the same things as I did. So, when you are starting your practice, if you are interested in working with deities, I personally would not recommend doing it right away. If you really want to work with a deity, I would recommend worship first. And that doesn't require an altar. Going back to the previous point, you don't need a deity altar. You can do acts of devotion. You can do online research as an act of devotion. And if you really want to give a physical offering, it can be as simple as making a cup of tea in their honor, leaving it to cool, and telling them, I'm going to drink this tea, in 5 minutes. They will absorb that energy, and then you drink the tea. There you go. That's an offering to a deity. This, again, is great if you're in the broom closet, because it can be suspicious if you're leaving something out. So, same thing with food. You can tell the deity, I'm going to eat this in 20 minutes. Leave it somewhere for them to absorb that energy. Be like, Nix, this piece of chocolate is for you. I'm going to consume it in X amount of time. She'll come, absorb the energy, and then you consume the food, and there you go. It's like it never even happened. And you are safe and worshiping that deity in whatever way that you want. On the vein of not having to worship a deity at all, the practice of witchcraft is secular, which means that there is no religion that's a part of witchcraft. The part that is deity work has to do with paganism. So if you want to practice witchcraft, you don't have to do anything with deities, and that is completely okay. You can be a very powerful witch and not work with deities. There are witches far more powerful than me that don't work with deities and that do work with deities. It doesn't matter, because witchcraft is secular. My next tip. There's more than one way to be a witch. If you are in a lot of online spaces and you are seeing people doing all sorts of different things, that is just one example of how many different ways there are to be a witch. There are so many different types of practices, and even within those practices, there's different ways to do it, because everyone's different. Everyone's past experiences are different, everyone's ancestry is different, everyone grew up differently, and that impacts your practice so much. What you are most drawn to is going to be different from one witch to another, from one pagan to another, from one Wiccan to another, and that impacts your practice. So don't feel the pressure to be just like another pagan that you follow, or another Wiccan that's in your coven. You can be different, and that is okay. You are just as good of a witch. I am very glad that I haven't let that impact me too much, especially now. I've realized that it's okay for me to kind of do my own thing. And I started off my witchcraft practice ritualizing my spells, and very quickly realized that that wasn't my style. So thankfully, I've come to accept that it's okay that I don't do rituals in the way that I've read in many books and seen in many videos. And that is just one of many examples where it's okay to practice differently than others. And just because you read something or watched something and learned something, you can do it differently in what speaks to you, and you can be just as amazing of a witch. Alright, our last 2 points. Witchcraft is a lot of research, and it's a lot more research than I thought it would be. So that's one thing that I definitely wish I knew before becoming a witch. Now, would it have changed my mind about becoming a witch? Absolutely not. But it might have been good to know just to prepare myself. So, whatever you are doing in your witchcraft practice, it's best to do some research around it. Whether it's the herbs that you're practicing with, the history of witchcraft, the history of your deities, the history of the people that worship the deities that you're worshiping. If you're working with spirits, looking into those spirits. For example, I work with animal spirits, so researching those animals. I have books on so many different topics, whether it's herbs, learning about the wheel of the year, paganism. I have a little bit on Wicca, just to learn about what Wicca is, even though I'm not Wiccan. Learning about different forms of divination, how to craft your own spells, crystals, herbalism, and now I have books on deities, and I'm learning about baneful magic now that I'm a little further into my practice. So there are so many things to research. You can do this in the form of books. I'm sure that you can find stuff in your library. For example, you can find some sort of field guide or book on herbalism to learn about herbs. because very often the medicinal properties associated with an herb have to do with their magical properties. So you can find a book on herbalism in a library for free, write down stuff about the herbs that you want to work with, and they can be kitchen herbs, just like we were talking about earlier, and there you go, you've already learned something for free. If you have access to the internet, which I'm assuming you do if you're watching this video, you have so much at your fingertips that you can research for free. So the last tip is write everything down. It is so important to write down any spells, thoughts, research, anything that you do, write down, because I promise you, if you don't, you're gonna wish that you did later on, because you're gonna remember, oh, I did this spell and it worked so well, but I can't remember what I did for it and I forgot to write it down. I've definitely done that before, and I have learned from that mistake, and now I write everything down. Alright everyone, that was the video. Those are 7 things that I wish I knew as a beginner witch. I hope that it was helpful to witches all across their journey. Leave any questions in the comments, and if you have anything that you wish you knew as a beginner witch, please leave that in the comments as well. I'm sure that it will be helpful to others. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!